Hello everybody, good morning. This is your video lesson for Wit and Wisdom for day 20 of unit or module 3, and this is for February 25th, Thursday. So yesterday we started our new book, The Story of Ruby Bridges. Right there. And today we are going to continue talking about exploded moments within the story of Ruby Bridges. Okay, so remember that our essential question for Module 3, the big question, is how can people respond to injustice? And our medium-sized question, the focusing question for modules or for this text is, how did Ruby Bridges respond to injustice? And then our small question, which is just for today's lesson, is what's happening in the story of Ruby Bridges? And today we're actually going to have a craft question, which is the writing question, and it is, how does an exploded moment work? So our goals for today are to be able to recount or retell a story of a text and include all of the story elements of that text. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Well, before we get started, let's do our vocabulary video. Oops. I need to share my screen first, don't I? Okay, here we go.
Hello, second grade friends, and welcome back to grade 2, module 3, vocabulary. I'm Mrs. Nowell. Today, we're practicing vocabulary for focusing question arc 4. Let's begin. Our first word is explode. Let's say explode.
Explode.
By looking at the icon, I can see where something exploded and there's a big amount of smoke in the air. If you like, with your hands, you can do a motion, explode, like that. Fantastic. Let's read the definition. The definition of explode is to suddenly expel energy or burst open. Now, let's listen to the word and definition in Spanish.
Explotar significa emitir energía o estallar de repente.
Beautiful. Let's practice reading the word explode in a sentence. When I dropped my lunchbox, I thought it might explode. Now, you try. Fantastic. I appreciate you trying to read those sentences. Our next word is moment. Let's say moment.
Moment.
By looking at the icon, I can see a stopwatch, and it's only showing me a little brief period of time, so maybe just a few seconds. That can help me remember the word moment. Let's read the definition. The definition of moment is a very short period of time. Again, usually just a few seconds. Now, let's listen to the word and definition in Spanish.
El momento significa un periodo de tiempo muy corto.
Fantastic. Now, let's practice reading the word moment in a sentence. You can either read it with me, or you can follow along as I read. My class was quiet for a moment when the bell rang. Then we began talking again. Now you try reading the sentence. I appreciate you practicing reading our sentences. For this practice, I want you to practice the vocabulary with your learning partner. I'll ask a question. Please answer in a complete sentence. Some people are surprised for a moment. When were you surprised for a moment? I was surprised for a moment when. Pause the video and talk to your learning partner using the sentence frame. I was surprised for a moment when. I answered this question. I was surprised for a moment when I was walking out of the room and my husband said, "Boo!" I definitely was surprised, but just for a moment. Our next word is anxious. Let's say anxious. By looking at the icon, I can see somebody is really thinking about something, and by their frown, I can tell that maybe they're worried about something. Let's read the definition. The definition of anxious is feeling nervous or worried. Let's listen to this word in definition in Spanish.
Ansioso o ansiosa. Significa que se siente nervioso o preocupado.
Let's practice reading the word anxious in a sentence. And again, you can follow along as I read, or you can read it with me. I was anxious about visiting the doctor to get my flu shot, but it did not hurt at all. Now, you practice reading this sentence. Thank you so much for practicing in reading our words. That is one way we can get better at reading and be better readers. Let's review. Here are the 3 words we practiced today. Let's say them each one more time. Explode.
Load.
Moment. Anxious. Beautiful. Please remember to use these words as much as you can in writing and speaking. Thank you for learning with me today, and thank you for doing great things and using great vocabulary. See you next time.
Welcome back, powerful thinkers. I'm Sue Sabella, your Great Minds teacher. Let's see what we need for today. Today we'll need handout 16B, the escape chart, your journal, and a pencil. Please pause here to grab what you need and just hit play when you're ready to continue. Today, we're going to experiment with exploded moments. We're going to work on one together, and then you're going to have an opportunity to try one all on your own. And I know you're going to do a great job. Ready? Let's go. Read this question with me. What is happening in this text? We'll be using the escape chart to help us think about the story elements in a short moment of this text. It's important to remember, because we're not using the scape chart to look at the whole book, there may not be an ending, but we will be able to determine the setting, who was there, the characters, what the action was or the big event, and also what the problem was that resulted in an action. I'm going to read this section of the text 2 times. The first time, I just want you to listen closely and listen for those story elements. Tune into when and where is this taking place? Who is there? What was the problem? Why were they there? And what was the action that someone took to help combat or attack that problem? Ready? Here we go. At that time, Black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The Black children were not able to receive the same education as the white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's law. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 Black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough 19. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to 1st grade in the William France Elementary School. Now I'm going to read the first page of this section, and I want you to listen carefully for the problem. Ready? Here we go. At that time, Black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The Black children were not able to receive the same education as the white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's law. Pause here to say the problem in your own words. You can chat with a learning partner, or you can just say the problem out loud. But take what was on this page and shrink it down to your own words. Pause and then just hit play to continue. The problem in the story is that Black children were not receiving the same education as white children. As I read the rest of this section, I really want you to listen for the setting, the characters, and also the action that was taken. Ready? Here we go. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 Black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough 19. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to 1st grade in the William France Elementary School. And remember, we can also learn information about the setting, characters, and action by analyzing or looking closely at the illustration. It provides information for us that was not included in the sentences. So also look at that illustration very closely. Pause here to think about where and when this happened, also who was there, and what action was taken. Put it into your own words and chat with a learning partner or say it out loud, and then just hit play when you're ready to do some thinking together. You probably noticed for the setting that this occurred or happened in 1960, and from the illustration, we can see that there's a judge in a robe and a flag in the room. This room is a courtroom. In addition to the judge and the 4 girls that were in the courtroom, we can also see from the illustration that it looks like the girls' families are present or there as well. And lastly, in this section of text, we learned that the judge took action. He ordered that the 4 Black girls go to the white elementary schools. By using the scape chart to think deeply about this section, we now have a better understanding about the problem that was happening in 1960. Black children were not receiving the same education as white children. The judge, who's in charge of protecting the laws, ordered the 4 Black girls to go to white elementary schools. The judge took action. Pause here to take a stretch break and just hit play when you're ready to continue. How does an exploded moment work? Now it's your chance to experiment and to give it a try. As you get ready to experiment by writing an exploding moment, it's important to remember that exploding moments help you add details to narrative writing by describing thoughts, feelings, and actions. This is called the exploded moment process chart. This chart gives us the steps in writing an exploded moment. The first step is to reread sections of the text and look at pictures. Remember, those illustrations provide so much information. Number 2 tells us to fill out the scape chart. You can use your handout for that, or you can create a scape chart in your journal. I'll show you how. Number 3 tells you to jot down ideas about thoughts, feelings, and actions. We can also capture that in your journal. And number 4 tells us to write a narrative that combines the scape, which are the story elements, with thoughts, feelings, and actions. Pause here to grab handout 16B, the scape chart, or you can create the scape chart in your journal along with the page for thoughts, feelings, and actions. When you're making a page for thoughts, feelings, and actions, you can use the icons or the pictures that we use to represent each, or you can use the words. Just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so obviously you do not have handout 16B. So we are going to make this in our journal. So in your knowledge response journal, please turn to page 140. You need to write page 140 and 141 at the bottom, please. We're going to do one side for the scape chart and one side for the thoughts and feelings. So you need to put SCAPE and then block them off so that they're nice and separated. And then put 3 sections on page 141 for thoughts, feelings, and actions. So go ahead and pause the video, get this copy down on page 140 and 141. Hit play when you are ready to continue.
Let's revisit the first direction in our exploded moment process chart. Reread sections of the text and look at pictures. Every day for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to the Fran school surrounded by marshals. Wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair and carrying her lunch pail, Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. Now it's time to fill out the scape chart. And remember, your facts for the story elements are coming directly from this text. So you can reread this text again using the page that's on the screen, Or you can scroll back to listen and to view again. Pause here to fill out the scape chart with all of the story elements. Remember, you may not have an ending since we're not using the scape chart for the whole book. Just hit play when you're ready to move to the next step in the exploded moment process chart.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to work on the scape chart using just that one page, okay? And what I want you guys to do is I want you to try to do parts of it on your own first. Like, I know that you can do the character part on your own easily, and you can do the setting part on your own easily. You could probably do the problem part on your own easily. So what I would want you to try to do right now is you're going to do the scape chart on your own, pause the video, finish it, and then play the video so that we can walk through the process together. Okay, so go ahead and pause and work and then hit play. All right, so for that small exploded moment, we know that the setting was at the France Elementary School. Okay, I know that the characters of that exploded moment, I have Ruby. It shows the marshals in there. And it shows the crowd or the angry mob. Okay. Now I'm going to skip down to the problem because I know the problem is easier to pick out than the action. I know that the problem is that it said the crowds were marching up and down the street. It says that they were yelling and shouting at her. And it says the crowd was pushing in on her. Okay, so now what does it say the action was in that section? I'm going to show you. Here we go. It says, every day for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to the France school surrounded by marshals. Wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair and carrying her lunch pail, Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. So what is the action there? The problem was that they were pushing towards her, they're yelling and shouting. Who took the action in this part of the story? Did Ruby take any action here? No, the marshals are the one who did the action. What actions did they take? It says the marshals kept them from Ruby. So we need to put that. Marshals. And how did they keep them from Ruby? What did they have to threaten the crowd with? threatened to arrest them. All right. So the problem was that crowds were marching up and down the street. They were yelling and shouting at her. They were pushing towards her. And the action was that the marshals kept them from Ruby and they threatened to arrest them. So now we need to look at the ending of just this small moment. The last sentence on this page says, Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. So how does this end? How does this moment end? It says she hurried. Did she talk to them? Nope. So Ruby hurried. And she doesn't talk to them. Okay, so I am very interested to see how much of your scape chart was similar to this one before we did it together. I bet you guys got a lot of the same information before you even watched me do it. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and go back to the video.
A possible scape chart might sound like this. The setting is the France school, outside the France school to be more specific. Also, the characters were Ruby, the crowd of people, and also the marshals. The crowd of people were pushing toward Ruby and shouting at her. The marshals took action and kept her safe. Ruby also took action. She hurried through the crowd and did not say a word. Now it's time to jot down ideas about thoughts, feelings, and actions. Use the scape chart and also dig back into this section. Read it again to help you think about how Ruby might have been feeling, what she might have been thinking, and the actions that she took. Pause to do this work now and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so let's go back and look at our chart together. So what do you think? What are some things that Ruby may have been thinking when she saw the crowds marching up and down the street? And when she heard them yelling and shouting at her, and when they were pushing towards her, what could she have been thinking? I think that she probably could have been thinking, are they going to hurt me? I know I would be thinking that. I know I would also be thinking, will the marshals be able to keep me safe? So what do you think some things are that Ruby is feeling during this problem? What are some emotions that she's having? So I know that even as an adult, if I were to see a big angry mob of people pushing and shoving to get to me and yelling and screaming nasty, mean things to me, that I would probably be very scared. So as a 6-year-old, Ruby was probably very scared. We learned another word in our vocabulary video today that probably describes how she was feeling. Do you guys remember the word anxious? She was probably very anxious about being able to get into that school building without anyone hurting her. What are some other feelings that you think she may have been having during this problem? Okay, and the last one is the actions. What actions did Ruby take? What did she do? Well, we know that she just kept walking. She didn't turn around. She didn't run home. She didn't run away. She just kept walking straight into that school building. Let's look back at that page and see if it gives us any more information. Every day for weeks, weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to the France school surrounded by marshals, wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair, and carrying her lunch pail. Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. So we should put that. Kept walking slowly at first. That tells us more information about her actions. Okay. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. So her actions towards the end, was she still walking slowly? Or she walked in a hurry? And we also see that she didn't talk at all. She just kept walking and didn't talk to them. So those are some of her actions. All right, so let's flip back to our video.
You've worked very hard filling out the scape chart and also jotting down your ideas about the characters' thoughts, feelings, and actions. During our next video lesson, we will move on to step 4, where you actually get to write a narrative that combines everything from the scape chart along with the thoughts, feelings, and actions chart. You've worked so hard to read and reread and to zoom in on just a small moment in time in a text. And by doing that, that will help you be able to create an exploded moment in a narrative. And next time that we meet, we'll have a chance to work on that a bit more. Thank you for working so hard, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Okay, so that is the end of the video lesson. So for work today, you are going to make sure that you have finished 140 and 141. If you pay attention to what Miss Isabella said, tomorrow's lesson, Friday's lesson will depend on this. So if you don't have this done by Friday, you can't do Friday's lesson, okay? So you need to make sure that today's work finished so that tomorrow you can do tomorrow's work, all right? So you are going to do those, take a picture and upload it to the Google slide. And that is it. I hope you guys have a great afternoon and I will see you later. Bye.